Good morning and welcome to episode 2 of Operation Little Plymouth podcast. Yesterday on episode 1, I was laying out the prospects and the perspectives of the Operation Little Moscow. When the communists in Europe, when communism was pretty much falling apart and collapsing, they established very strong movements and actions for communism to somehow thrive, prosper, or at least to be protected in the local level. And I was talking about and elaborating upon the understanding and the reality that today, all around us, everything we see, all the news that come out, not only out of Washington or Austin, our capital here in Texas, but also here in a very close proximity to all of us in the local level, how communism, socialism, Marxism, globalism, statism, progressivism has been invading our marketplace of ideas, and even the operations and the actions of individuals, of churches, of small businesses in the local level. This is why I have been beating this drum for 2 years at least, that we should pay attention or pay more attention to everything that goes on in the local level than paying attention to everything that comes out of Washington, D.C. Much of that is a lot of distraction for us not to pay attention in the local level. For example, right now we are right in the middle of an election process here in the local level. Yesterday I was attending a forum, a candidate forum, and mayoral candidates were there, MISD candidates were there, and other candidates, justice of the peace. So this is where our attentions should be focused on. And my perspective and my focus today on this episode 1 is to expand a little bit the understanding that I have of Little Plymouth. Again, back to Plymouth Rock, where the Puritans landed in 1620. To be more precise, November the 11th, 1620. And they crossed the Atlantic in the Mayflower. They signed the Mayflower Compact in the boat, in the ship, before they even set foot on the new land. And those 44 signers of the Mayflower Compact started that document by saying, "To the glory of God." And I also mentioned that 10 years later, when the state of Massachusetts is being officialized as a local colony, as an official colony of the British Kingdom, John Winthrop was the one that led the process there. And he said, "We did not come for wealth. We did not come for fur. We came to establish a covenant with God." So let me talk to you about this book. This book is called Errand into the Wilderness, Perry Miller. I really recommend all of you to purchase a copy of this book. It was written in 1956 by Perry Miller. And he pretty much sums up a lot that happened in the initial 13 colonies here in America. And again, we're rescuing the spirit of 1620, the spirit of the Mayflower, the spirit of the Puritans that came, and why they came to America, what the purposes were. And it is very clear to me right now, as it is very clear to many of you out there, that they really came to establish a new settlement initially, then a nation that would have the utmost purpose of being a light in the darkness, of being a beacon of hope and freedom and liberty to the world based on having God and his principles as their foundational grounds for the nation. So what I'm going to do here today, just to wrap up this quick podcast and on this day, episode 2, is I'm going to read to you 2 paragraphs from this book, Errand into the Wilderness by Perry Miller, so you can understand what he was talking about, or what he is talking about in the book, and you will be able to read it as soon as you get a copy of that. So Perry Miller says, with their keen desire to extend the kingdom of God to all people, and with opportunity to establish a godly commonwealth as a real possibility, entire congregations of Puritans took ship and planted the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Future Governor John Winthrop reminded the people that they should become as a, quote, city set on a hill, unquote, for the rest of the world to see. There would be no more fighting over priestly vestments, gaudy cathedrals, or compromising bishops. The economic hard times left behind in England could be remedied with honest, hard work, the political structure placed entirely in the hands of godly men, the liberty ensured by biblical law, common law, and representative local governments would all contribute to what they called a reformed Zion, impossible to obtain in England. While still loyal to the crown, the Puritans would find that 3,000 miles of separation would prove a barrier to intrusive controls from the royal busybodies. The British Puritans settled in towns with the church building as the central gathering place. They established local governments which, though having independent jurisdiction, cooperated with the ministers and faced criticisms, the government did, from the pulpits if they strayed from biblical principle. The people themselves were a colorful lot, and recent research has uncovered the records of a vibrant yet prosperous, not vibrant yet, vibrant and prosperous society seeking to accomplish the will of God through the concept of calling. They also understood the individual depravity of man and the effects of personal sin, as well as the applications of biblical law to maintain social order. So that is the spirit, and that is the concept that I have before or behind this title of this podcast, Operation Little Plymouth. Is coming back, or bring America's cities, bring Midland, Odessa, Andrews, here in the Permian Basin, the cities that surround us, to the understanding that it is in the local level that we should focus our attention. That is in the grassroots. That is in the local union, not only of the people of God, but anybody. You don't need to be a child of God to practice integrity, to practice honesty, to practice and live in truth. So that is the purpose of this idea, or behind all of this podcast. And this is just episode 2. I really intend to expand that concept of Operation Little Plymouth, because we are surrounding today by a very, very oppressive spirit of socialism, of antichrist practices and philosophies. And we really, really need to pay attention, or to start to pay attention again to what happens in, very close to home, in our backyard, so to speak. I want to wrap up this episode 2 today with 2 quotes from 2 other guys. One of them not a Christian. He was philosophically a believer in Christianity. He was not a Christian himself. He was not converted to Christ. He was not convicted by the cross and by the sacrifice of Jesus for the redemption of mankind, of humanity. His name was Alexis de Tocqueville, probably one of the most renowned classic authors, philosophers in almost 2 centuries ago. He was a French diplomat, a French representative, or a French politician. And he spent almost a year, close to 10 months here in America, visiting the colonies between 1831 and 1832. He goes back home. He writes the classic book, Democracy in America. I also strongly recommend you to read that book, because he addresses everything he has seen here in America firsthand. And one of the things that Alexis de Tocqueville saw, and he wrote in his book, Democracy in America, when he talked about the greatness of America, he was wondering what happened in these 13 colonies that decided to get together as a new nation. So France was collapsing because of the French Revolution, right? And he was looking at all of that and comparing that revolution to the revolution that America had just had. And he comes to the point of asking the question to himself, asking himself that question: where is the greatness of America? Where can it be located? And he goes on by saying, well, I looked for that greatness of this new country. America was close to 50 years of age, or 50 years old when he writes that book, talking about the greatness of America. And he says, I looked for the greatness of America and then he puts out a list of many places, in its harbors, in its beautiful mountains and fields, in its states, in its constitution. I looked for the greatness of America in its majestic commerce, world commerce, military. And so he goes on to list a long list of places that he could have found the greatness of America. And in the end, he says, I did not find the greatness of America in any of those places. And he says, the only place that I found the greatness of America was when I entered the churches of America and I saw the pulpits aflame with righteousness. Pulpits aflame with righteousness. That's where I found the greatness of America. You see, not a Christian saying this. He was, again, very aligned to the philosophical principles of Christianity, but he was not a child of God. He was not a convert, at least not at this point in time when he writes about that. And he recognizes that the churches of America and the preaching and the sermons coming out of those pulpits aflame with righteousness was the real reason America was great. Because the pulpit pretty much shaped up the hearts, the mindsets, and the actions of the people. And this is why he says that America is great, because he sees that the place that has been shaping up, forming, preparing the hearts and the minds of those men and women, and at that time only men, to serve in political positions were the churches. And that is not for any other reason that Charles Finney, the great name behind the Second Great Awakening here in America, very close to the time when Tocqueville writes his book, Charles Finney says, in the Second Great Awakening here in America, he says, the time has come for Christianity, or Christians, to vote for honest men and take consistent ground in politics, or the Lord will curse them. Christians have been exceedingly guilty in this matter, but the time has come that they must act differently. Christians seem to act as if they thought God did not see what they do in politics. But I tell you, he does see it. And God will bless or curse this nation according to the course Christians take in politics. So you see how aligned both authors, both famous, renowned figures here in America are. One is not even in America. He goes back to France. And Charles Finney is an American. He comes to Christ. He is brought to the knowledge of Jesus and the salvation and the power of the cross and the gospel of Christ. And he says, if we do not act accordingly, according to our calling, because I understand and I know that he was very assured of the first line of the preamble of the American Constitution that says, we the people. He understood that we the people were the government. He understood that the founding fathers limited the government by the natural God-given rights of each one of the citizens. So he says we need to act accordingly in politics, in government, or God will punish this nation. So I'm wrapping up here episode 2 of Operation Little Plymouth. Again, my name is Eliel Rosa. I'm the founder of the Nehemiah School of Government here in Midland, Texas. We're going to be celebrating our 5th anniversary in January this coming year. And there is information here in the description of this video about the ministry, how you can take a look at what we do here and contribute if you so wish to do. And may God bless you. I will be back with you for episode 3. And my purpose again will be to expand this concept and this plan, actually, this battle plan of preparing Christians to act in the local level so that God's kingdom and God's principles may be not only advanced but consolidated in our local level through the lives of men and women that are full of integrity, full of commitment with God's principles, and ready to be God's ambassadors here on this planet and in the local level especially. May God bless you, and see you on episode 3.